Hi, I'm Serena. And for 10 years, I thought I was building a life with my husband, until the day he called me and said, "Pack your things and get out." Just like that. No warning, no explanation. But what hurt more than his words? The realization that our marriage had never been real. That everything, our home, our finances, even our love, had been nothing more than a carefully constructed lie. And when he told me to talk to his parents, I thought I'd finally get answers. Instead, I uncovered something so much bigger, a secret that turned my entire life upside down. How do you move forward when you realize you were never meant to win? When the people you trusted the most were the ones setting you up to fail? Because I didn't just lose a marriage, I lost the illusion of control. But what happened next? He never saw it coming. The phone buzzed in my hand, the cold metal pressing against my palm as I stared at the screen. Dorian Kane, my husband, the man I had shared my life with for nearly a decade. I hesitated before answering, something deep inside me whispering that whatever was coming next would change everything. His voice was devoid of warmth, stripped of any trace of the man I used to know. "I don't want to see you anymore. Pack your things and leave before I get home." The world around me blurred. I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. A hollow silence stretched between us before the line went dead. I stood there, gripping the phone, trying to process the words that had just sliced through my life. My vision swam, a deep, nauseating pit forming in my stomach. This couldn't be happening. My hands trembled as I redialed, the screen flashing, calling. For an agonizing few seconds before going straight to voicemail, I tried again. Nothing. Panic settled in, wrapping its cold fingers around my throat. My chest tightened, and for a brief moment, I struggled to breathe. How had we gotten here? I slumped onto the couch, staring at the city lights flickering outside our floor-to-ceiling windows. This apartment, our home, suddenly felt like an unfamiliar space, walls closing in on me. The past few months flashed through my mind like a film reel, each memory a jagged piece of a puzzle I had refused to put together. Dorian had been distant, his touch growing colder, his gaze lingering elsewhere even when we were in the same room. The late-night meetings that ran longer than they should have. The phone calls he always dismissed when I was near. The sudden weekends away for business that had no paper trail. I had ignored the signs, convincing myself that work was pulling him away, that stress was making him distant. But now, staring at my reflection in the glass, I saw it for what it was. I had been a fool. Tears pricked at the edges of my eyes, but I swallowed them down. Crying wouldn't change the fact that my husband had just discarded me like I was nothing. The sharp knock at the door jolted me. I hesitated before rising, my legs unsteady as I crossed the room. When I opened the door, a man in a navy blue uniform stood there, holding a thick envelope. "Mrs. Kane?" The name felt foreign. "Yes," I whispered. "This is for you. Please sign here." With numb fingers, I scribbled my signature, barely processing what I was doing. The moment I closed the door, I tore open the envelope. A stack of crisp white papers slid into my hands. Divorce papers. My breath hitched as I flipped through the documents. His signature was already there, ink-dried, as if he had been waiting for this moment. He had planned this. This wasn't an argument that escalated too far. This was calculated, cold, premeditated. A deep anger flared in my chest, pushing back the heartbreak that threatened to consume me. And then I saw it. A single note, written in Dorian's familiar scrawl. "If you have questions, talk to my parents. They'll explain." My pulse pounded in my ears. His parents? They had never truly accepted me. I had been an outsider, tolerated but never embraced. And now I was supposed to go to them for answers? A bitter laugh escaped my lips. This had been orchestrated. I was the last to know. The realization hit me like a freight train. I wasn't just losing my husband. I had never really had him. My gaze swept across the apartment, lingering on the framed wedding photo on the console table. Dorian's arm was wrapped around me, his smile easy, effortless. A lie I had believed in. My fingers curled around the frame. The glass shattered as it hit the floor. My heart pounded, my breath ragged. But through the haze of pain, a single thought cut through like steel. I will not go down without answers. The long driveway stretched before me, lined with towering oaks whose golden leaves swayed in the crisp autumn breeze. The estate loomed ahead, as imposing as ever, silent, cold, a relic of power and control. I hadn't been here in over a year, and yet nothing had changed. Not the polished stone steps leading to the grand double doors. Not the scent of burning wood from the fireplace inside. Not the chill in my stomach that always accompanied visits to the Kine estate. I parked, gripping the steering wheel for a moment before stepping out. My heels clicked against the gravel as I approached the entrance, my breath visible in the crisp afternoon air. The door opened before I even knocked. Eleanor Kane stood there, elegant as always in a fitted cream-colored dress, her pearl earrings catching the light. Her smile was polite, but held no warmth. "We thought you might come sooner." Of course, they had been expecting me. Bernard Kane was already seated in the study, a glass of scotch in one hand, flipping through a newspaper, as if my presence was nothing more than an appointment on his calendar. He barely looked up. "Have a seat, Serena." No fake sympathy, no feigned concern. Just bored indifference, as if my life unraveling was nothing more than an inconvenience they had to address. I sat, back straight, hands resting in my lap. Why did Dorian send me here? My voice was even, but my fingers curled against my thighs. Bernard sipped his drink, finally glancing at me. "Because, my dear, this marriage was never about love." The words landed like a slap. Eleanor tilted her head slightly, watching for my reaction. When I didn't flinch, she reached into the desk drawer and pulled out a thick folder, sliding it across the mahogany surface. "You should read this." I hesitated, but then I saw it. My name, Serena Kane, printed in bold at the top of the document. My fingers were steady as I flipped it open. Prenuptial agreement. My heart pounded. I had never signed a prenuptial agreement. Yet, there it was. The clauses were brutal. If the marriage ended before 15 years, Dorian retained full control of all financial assets. If I initiated the divorce, I would walk away with nothing. If Dorian filed, I would get a minor settlement, but only under certain conditions. I flipped through the pages, my stomach twisting. I wasn't just being discarded. I had been trapped from the start. I never signed this. Eleanor's lips curled into a knowing smile. "Dorian planned ahead, dear. We all did." I felt sick. This was a setup. My voice came out flat, but inside, I was burning. "Of course it was." Bernard's tone was dismissive, as if I should have known all along. "You were a suitable choice, Serena, but Dorian had other obligations." A suitable choice, not a partner, not a wife, just a piece in a carefully arranged game. I gritted my teeth, forcing my expression to remain unreadable. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing me break. Eleanor sipped her tea, watching me like a cat watching a trapped mouse. "You look surprised. But tell me, Serena, did you really think you were the first?" The air in the room seemed to thin. "What?" Bernard leaned forward, eyes sharp. "You weren't the first, and you won't be the last." It hit me then. This wasn't about love, or even convenience. This was what they did. Handpick a woman, marry her under false pretenses, keep her just long enough to serve a purpose, a merger, a business deal, an image to uphold. Then, when she was no longer useful, discard her, making sure she walked away with nothing. A cold rage settled in my chest. Eleanor set her teacup down. "We'll make this easy for you. Sign the papers, accept the settlement, walk away quietly." Bernard's voice was sharper. "There's no fight to win here, Serena. You're already out." I forced myself to stay still, to breathe, to process. I had walked into this house expecting to fight for my marriage. Instead, I had uncovered a machine designed to destroy women like me. But I wouldn't be the next casualty. I closed the folder carefully and placed it back on the desk. Then I stood, smoothing down the front of my coat, schooling my face into something unreadable. I met Eleanor's gaze, holding it steady. If Dorian planned ahead, then so will I. For the first time, her smirk faltered. Bernard watched me with something that almost resembled intrigue. I turned on my heel and walked out, stepping into the cold autumn air, gripping the prenup tightly in my hands. My breath was steady, my mind was sharp. I wasn't leaving this fight empty-handed. The rain had started by the time I reached my apartment. It wasn't heavy, just a slow, persistent drizzle that painted streaks across the glass windows, blurring the city skyline beyond. I dropped my coat onto the chair, my hands still clutching the prenuptial agreement. The paper felt heavier than it should, as if it carried the weight of every moment I had been deceived. I moved toward the kitchen, pouring myself a glass of wine with hands that didn't quite steady. The silence in the apartment was suffocating. It had always been too big, too immaculate, decorated to Dorian's taste more than mine. And now, it felt like I was standing in a stranger's home. I set the wine down and unfolded the prenup on the dining table. My eyes traced every clause, every loophole designed to strip me of power before I even knew I needed it. How had I not seen it? My mind drifted back through the past years, searching for the cracks I had ignored. Dorian always had the upper hand, always. The way he could steer any conversation, making me feel like I was imagining things when I questioned him. The way his parents gifted us vacations at the exact moments I had doubts, whisking us away just long enough for me to forget whatever had been nagging at me. And the documents, contracts, legal forms, slid in between normal paperwork. Just sign here, babe. It's standard. I had been a fool, not naive, not inexperienced, just unaware that I had married into a family that played by a different set of rules. I sank onto the couch, running a hand through my hair. There had to be more. And then, something clicked. I grabbed my laptop and opened my email. Scrolling through years of messages, I searched for something, anything, an old connection, a thread I had forgotten to pull. Then, I saw it. Nicholas Avery. His name had appeared in a conversation Dorian had once shut down immediately. A quick search led me to a series of financial articles from nearly a decade ago. Nicholas Avery, once a powerful businessman, had vanished from the public eye after a high-profile divorce from a woman with deep family ties. Something about the case felt too familiar. I hesitated only for a moment before pressing call. The phone rang twice before a voice answered. "Who is this?" "My name is Serena Kane," I said, "and I think we have something in common." There was silence. Then a sigh. "I was wondering when you'd call." A chill ran through me. "You know who I am?" "I know what you're going through," Nicholas said, "because I went through the same thing." I swallowed hard. "Tell me everything." Nicholas didn't rush. His tone was steady, but there was something beneath it. Exhaustion, bitterness, the weight of a man who had already lost. He had been in the exact same situation. A contract-bound marriage, carefully designed to pull him in, keep him in place just long enough to serve a purpose, then discard him when the time came. The same patterns, the same tricks. "And let me guess," I murmured. "She got everything. You got nothing." "Not just nothing," Nicholas said. "They erased me." He explained how his ex-wife's family had severed his business ties, turning former allies against him. How he had been forced out of his own company, financially ruined, reputation destroyed. All because he had been stupid enough to believe it was real. I gripped the phone tighter. "This is a cycle, isn't it?" "It's a machine, Serena." His voice was grim. "And now you're the latest casualty." I let the words sink in. I could feel the anger rising, not hot and reckless, but cold and sharp, settling into something dangerous. Nicholas exhaled. "Listen to me. If you think you can beat them, you need more than just anger." "I don't need anger," I said quietly. "I need strategy." He didn't respond immediately. Then he chuckled, dark and knowing. "Good." After the call, I sat motionless, the city lights flickering against the rain-soaked windows. I wasn't just another victim. I wasn't going to disappear. I grabbed a pen and a notebook, flipping to a blank page. And I started writing. A list of every legal loophole I could use. Every person still tied to Dorian that I could turn. Every move I could make before they even saw me coming. They had built this game for themselves. Let's see what happens when someone else plays it. The next morning, the sky hung heavy with gray clouds, a mirror of the cold certainty settling in my bones. I stepped into Hastings and Lowell L.P.L., one of Manhattan's most ruthless law firms. Elliot Marston, a corporate attorney who owed me a favor, was expecting me. "Serena," he greeted, leaning back in his chair. I dropped a folder onto his desk. Not long enough. His gaze flicked over the documents, his neutral expression hardening. "Jesus!" I crossed my arms. "Tell me something I don't know." Elliot flipped through the pages, brows knitting. "Serena, you never had a marriage. You had a contract. And the worst part? Some clauses were altered after you signed. The ink's different. This prenup was tampered with." A sharp chill ran through me. "You're saying they forged my contract?" "I'm saying you weren't meant to notice." My stomach twisted. "Who orchestrated this?" Elliot hesitated, then slid another file toward me. The name on it wasn't Dorian's. "No," I whispered. "Yes," Elliot said darkly. "Dorian's rich, but not powerful. Not like this." I scanned the documents. Bank statements, shell companies, financial transfers. This wasn't just a divorce. It was a scheme to control wealth through marriages. I was just another pawn. "Does Dorian even know?" I asked. Elliot's pause was too long. "If he does, he's as trapped as you." Anger burned away my nausea. "What are my options?" "Legally, you could challenge it, but they designed this to drain you in court." "And the smart option?" Elliot shut the folder. "Find leverage. Make them regret thinking you were an easy target." An hour later, I stepped onto the wet pavement, mind racing. That's when I noticed it. A black car, too polished, too clean. A man in a tailored suit stepped into my path. "You've done enough digging, Ms. Kane." I raised a brow. "And you are?" He ignored the question. "Take the settlement, walk away." I huffed a short laugh. There it is. The first threat. Not a threat, a suggestion. "Or what?" His expression remained cool. "Or you'll wish this divorce was the worst thing to happen to you." I stepped forward, voice steady. "Tell your boss. If he thinks I'll roll over, he hasn't done his research." For the first time, his smirk faltered. I turned and walked away. I wasn't just fighting Dorian anymore. The city hummed around me as I walked, the weight of what had just happened settling into my bones. I had been threatened before, but this was different. This wasn't personal. It was business. And that made it far more dangerous. I hailed a cab, ignoring the way my hands clenched into fists in my lap as we weaved through traffic. I needed more than speculation, more than anger. I needed proof. By the time I reached Archer and Webb Investigations, my pulse had evened out, my mind sharp again. This was where the real fight started. The office smelled of stale coffee and old leather, a stark contrast to the sleek law firms I was used to. Private investigators weren't interested in appearances. They were interested in results. The man behind the desk barely glanced up from his laptop. James Archer, a former NYPD detective turned private investigator, rumored to have dirt on half the city. "You came to the right place," he said, finally looking at me. "But that doesn't mean you're gonna like what you find." I pulled out a folder and slid it across the desk. "I need everything on these people. Bank records, offshore accounts, any deals they don't want in the open." James flipped through the pages, eyebrows raising slightly. "This isn't about a cheating husband, is it?" I shook my head. "It's about power." His lips twitched. "Good. That means it's worth my time." For the next hour, I watched as he pulled up files, cross-referencing names, searching records that weren't exactly public. Then, something shifted. His expression darkened as he leaned closer to the screen. Well, well, well. Looks like your ex and his family are dirtier than I thought. I leaned in. What did you find? Shell companies, he said, scrolling through the records. Money laundering through fake investments. And get this, your name is tied to one of them. My stomach dropped. What? They didn't just screw you in the divorce, lady. They used you. Your accounts, your name, your business. Everything was a front for them to move money. I swallowed hard. So they didn't just use me, they laundered through me. James nodded. If this gets out, it won't just be a divorce case. It'll be a federal investigation. I sat back, gripping the armrests of the chair. I had come here looking for leverage. Instead, I had found a loaded gun. As I left the office, my mind raced through the possibilities. I had two options. Take this information and use it to crush them in court. Go public and let the government do the job for me. Either way, the Canes would lose. I barely had time to process before I saw it. The black car. Parked across the street, waiting. I kept walking. I had expected them to send someone, but not so soon. Not so obvious. The same man from before stepped out, his expression unreadable. I told you to walk away. I crossed my arms. And I told you I don't take orders. His jaw tensed. You have no idea what you've started. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. No, I whispered. You have no idea what I just found. His eyes flickered, just for a second. Gotcha. I didn't go straight home. Instead, I pulled out my phone and made the one call that would change everything. Elliot, I said when my lawyer picked up. Get ready to file. We're tearing this contract apart. The game had officially started. Elliot didn't waste time. By the time I stepped into his office the next morning, a fresh legal motion was already waiting on his desk. Fraudulent financial activity, misconduct in contractual agreements, intentional asset concealment. This wasn't just about my prenup anymore. Dorian won't see this coming, Elliot said, flipping through the paperwork. His smirk was sharp. He thought he was covering his tracks. He didn't count on you fighting back. I leaned forward. File it. He nodded and picked up the phone. Let's make his morning a disaster. By noon, my case was officially in motion. The lawsuit challenged the entire foundation of the prenup, citing fraud and financial manipulation. If it went through, Dorian wouldn't just lose his settlement leverage, he'd lose his entire financial standing. For the first time in days, I felt the smallest rush of victory. And then, an email from Elliot's office shattered it. Dorian was prepared. He had moved assets weeks before filing for divorce. Bank accounts were drained. Stocks were transferred. Everything liquid had been restructured under different holdings. A preemptive countermeasure. My stomach twisted as I scanned the details. He had been planning this long before he made that phone call telling me to leave. I clenched my fists, my breath coming in short, controlled exhales. So he was always 2 steps ahead. I wasn't surprised, but I was angry. I slammed my laptop shut. I needed to hit him harder. That evening, as I paced my apartment, my phone vibrated. Anonymous message. I can help. Meet me. I froze, staring at the screen. It wasn't a number I recognized. I hesitated, fingers hovering over the keyboard, debating whether this was a trap. Then I typed 2 words. Where? The bar was dimly lit, the kind of place that catered to people who didn't want to be seen. I stepped inside, scanning the room until I spotted a lone figure sitting in a booth, watching me. I slid into the seat across from him. Who are you? I asked, keeping my voice even. He smirked. Someone who used to believe in Dorian. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a USB drive, setting it on the table between us. Dorian thinks he's untouchable, he said, voice low. Let's change that. I picked up the drive, my fingers tightening around it. What's on here? Proof, he said. Offshore accounts, illegal transfers. The money he moved before filing? This shows where it went, and it's not clean. My pulse pounded. This wasn't just leverage, this was evidence. I met his gaze. "Why are you doing this?" He exhaled slowly. "Because I trusted him, and I lost everything." I nodded once. "Welcome to the club." I got back to my apartment and plugged the USB into my laptop. The files loaded instantly. Bank transactions, wire transfers, dummy corporations, a meticulous paper trail of fraud, money laundering, and financial deceit. I took a steady breath. Then I pulled up my email. To Elliot Marston, subject, new evidence attachment, confidential files. I hit send. Then I opened my messaging app and typed a single sentence. "You wanted to play games? Let's play." Seconds later, Dorian's name lit up my screen. I let the call go to voicemail. Then I poured myself a drink and leaned back in my chair, watching the city skyline. Now let's see how he reacts when he's the one losing. The morning passed in silence, except for the occasional ding of my phone as news alerts rolled in. Kane, financial faces legal battle amidst divorce scandal. Dorian Kane, accused of financial misconduct, insider leak? Who is Serena Kane? The woman bringing a financial empire to its knees. I smirked. The game was no longer played in the shadows. Then came the knock. Hard. Repetitive. Angry. I knew who it was before I even opened the door. Dorian stormed in the moment I unlatched it, his jaw clenched, eyes blazing. He looked nothing like the composed, untouchable man he had always been. This was someone on the verge of losing control. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" His voice was sharp, laced with barely concealed panic. I crossed my arms. "Yes." I took back control. He let out a bitter laugh, pacing the room like a caged animal. "You think this is some kind of revenge story? You think you can win against people like us? Then why do you sound so desperate?" I tilted my head, watching him closely. He stopped, his nostrils flaring. "You have no idea the kind of mess you've just stepped into, Serena." "Oh, I think I do," I said coolly. "The real question is, do you?" Then his phone rang. His entire demeanor shifted. His gaze darted to the screen before he quickly stepped away, lowering his voice as he answered. "I can fix this." "No, I didn't know she had the files. I swear, I felt my stomach turn. He wasn't scared of me. He was scared of them. When Dorian turned back, his rage had drained, replaced with something I rarely saw in him. Fear. "Who was that?" I asked, though I already had an idea. He didn't answer. I stepped forward. "Looks like I'm not the only one being played." His hands balled into fists. "You don't understand what you've done." "Then enlighten me." For the first time, he hesitated. And that told me everything. The pieces began falling into place. The offshore accounts, the silent business partners, the deals I had never been privy to. I had assumed Dorian was the one pulling the strings, but he wasn't. Someone bigger, someone powerful, someone who controlled even him. This wasn't just a divorce anymore. "This isn't just about us, is it?" I asked, my voice quieter now. Dorian's jaw tightened. He gave me one last unreadable look before turning and walking out the door. For the first time, he didn't have a smug parting shot. The elevator ride was silent, except for the faint hum of the mechanics shifting behind the polished steel walls. 34th floor. I stood still, staring at my reflection in the mirrored panels. The woman staring back was calm, composed, but not the same woman who had walked into this mess. The doors slid open. A receptionist, dressed in a sleek black suit, gave me a practiced smile. "Ms. Kane, they're expecting you." Of course they were. She gestured toward a set of large double doors at the end of the corridor. My heels echoed as I walked. Each step was measured, deliberate. No hesitation, no fear. I pushed the doors open, and there they were. Not just an investor, not just a silent partner. Someone I had known for years. Someone who had watched me fall apart and had done nothing. The real mastermind. The smirk on their face was calm, calculating. "Well, Serena, I was wondering when you'd figure it out." I lowered myself into the chair across from them, my hands steady as I set my bag beside me. So, it was you. They leaned back. You always were smart. Too smart, actually. That was the problem. My stomach twisted, but I didn't let it show. This wasn't about money, I said slowly. They tilted their head, amused. No, dear. It never was. I swallowed the anger bubbling in my chest. I wasn't going to let them see it. Then what? They exhaled as if they were speaking to a slow student who had finally caught up. This was never about Dorian. He's just a convenient pawn. Disposable, really. My jaw clenched. Then who was the real target? Their eyes darkened. Your father. A slow chill ran through me. My father has nothing to do with this. Oh, but he does. They leaned forward. You see, years ago, he made enemies. Powerful ones. He thought walking away would be enough. But people like us. We don't forget, Serena. My throat tightened. So you used me. Not used, positioned. They shrugged. The marriage? Just a tool. A way to ensure that what your father built would be dismantled piece by piece. Dorian played his part. And you? You were never meant to last long. I felt the sharp sting of betrayal dig deep, but I forced myself to exhale, keeping my hands relaxed. And now? I asked. They slid a folder toward me. Now, we end this cleanly. Take the settlement, disappear, and you'll walk away with more than most do. I glanced at the papers. An easy way out. A golden parachute. A way to make me disappear. I ran my fingers over the crisp edges, pretending to consider. Then, I slowly pushed the papers back across the table. No deal. For the first time, their smirk wavered. I reached into my bag, pulling out a small USB drive and sliding it across the table. You built a system so powerful, you thought no one could break it. But here's the thing. I leaned in, watching their eyes narrow. I already sent these files to the DOJ. Silence. A long, tense silence. Then, their fingers drummed once against the table. You think that's enough? I smiled. Number, I think it's just the beginning. 3 months later, I sat in the cold, rigid wooden bench of a Manhattan courtroom, watching as the remnants of my past unraveled before me. Dorian sat at the defense table, his hands clasped, a hollow look in his eyes. He wasn't the man I once knew, the charming, composed executive who had convinced me that our life together was built on something real. No, this version of Dorian was smaller, stripped of his arrogance, left only with the weight of his own choices. The prosecutor stood. Mr. Kane, can you confirm the existence of the offshore accounts linked to your firm? Dorian hesitated. His lawyer leaned in, whispering something, but he only exhaled heavily before speaking. Yes. His voice was flat, resigned. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. And can you confirm that these accounts were used to funnel money through fraudulent investments? Investments tied directly to your prenuptial agreement? Dorian's jaw clenched. He looked down at his hands before nodding. Yes. I felt no victory in his downfall. This wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about setting things right. The judge cleared his throat, straightening the papers in front of him. Given the evidence presented, this court finds that the prenuptial agreement is void, as it was predicated on fraudulent financial activity. Furthermore, Mr. Kane is to remain under federal investigation for financial crimes related to Kane Financial. The gavel struck. It was over. Dorian turned slightly, looking at me from across the room. His eyes were tired, no longer burning with the anger or entitlement I had seen before. I never had a choice, he muttered. I studied him for a long moment before responding. Neither did I, until now. I walked out of the courthouse into the crisp fall air, inhaling deeply, trying to shake the weight of it all. As I reached the steps, my phone buzzed. A single message. You won this round, but be careful where you step next. I exhaled slowly. Even behind bars, the mastermind still had reach, But this time, I wasn't afraid. I stared at the message before typing a response. I don't play by your rules anymore. And I hit send. Months later, I stood in my new apartment, overlooking the skyline of a city that didn't know my name. The furniture was sparse, the walls still bare, but this space was mine. No contracts, no hidden agendas, no carefully planned moves designed to trap me in someone else's game. I had spent too long inside their world, playing by their rules, trying to survive in a system that was never meant to be fair. But now, I was building my own. I let out a small breath, one I hadn't even realized I'd been holding, and stepped forward, leaving the past behind me where it belonged. For the first time in years, I was free. As I stood by my window, looking out at the city lights, I realized something. Life doesn't always give us the choices we want, but it does give us the chance to take back control. The truth is, we are always one decision away from changing everything. It's easy to let others dictate our worth, to let relationships, careers, or even society tell us what we deserve. But the moment you decide to break free, the moment you refuse to be a pawn in someone else's game, that's when real power begins. Maybe you've been in a situation where you felt powerless. Maybe you've trusted the wrong people, believed in something that turned out to be a lie. But know this, you are never as stuck as you think you are. There is always a way forward. And if this video resonated with you, if it made you think or even feel something, drop a 1 in the comments. Tell me where you're watching from. And if you didn't like it, tell me why. I want to know. Don't forget to subscribe. This is just the beginning. I'll see you in the next one.